Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Yeah. It was supposed to be spring. They signed the baseball agreement, so then all this baseball again. So I figured it's time to give me a little Charlie Brown baseball, and there it is, snow on the ground. I was so sad when I saw that in the weather report. All right, so here we are, Sermon on the Mount. Today's message is entitled, this is an inside job. It's an inside job. An inside job. That's what it is. Matthew 5:8, it is, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Amen. Okay, let's start in Los Angeles today. I don't ever want to go there. It's in a state I don't want to visit. That's where we're going to start today. In 1982, a very nice lady, her name was Anna Mae Pennica. Now this story comes out of Los Angeles Times, 1982, by the way. Back to that again. Now she's been blind since birth. So she lived her entire life blind. Not the biggest tragedies, really. It's just, especially if you've learned to accept it and you can live a good life. She's around 40, I thought it was 3, let me look real quick. 47, she met her husband in Braille class. And she met and married him. And for 15 years after that, he was her eyes. Which confused me when I read this because they were in Braille class. He can see. He's taking Braille class. But the clue is 15 years he was her eyes because that's when he went blind. He apparently had a condition and he knew it was coming, so he was just sort of preparing himself. So he had learned how to read Braille and stuff like that. And after 15 years, he was blind. So, let's see what's here. So, her whole life, she'd never seen the green of spring, the blue of winter, the beauty of the flowers that she could smell. And she didn't hold a grudge. And she had a really good attitude. She had a wonderfully supportive family, a supportive husband. And she had, what it says, always exuded a remarkable cheerful spirit. And then in October of 81, now this is a long name of a hospital. The doctor at this hospital, and it goes, I think they could shorten this, Jules Stein Eye Institute of the University of California at Los Angeles. You can shorten that up. Just say the eye hospital or something, right? So they do an operation on her, and it's a technical one, I suppose, and they take the damaged cataract out of there and replace it, whatever it is, and all of a sudden, she can see. She can see out of her left eye. Now, spoiler alert, she can see out of both eventually, but the one eye, the story talks about the one eye, and she can see. Now, the newspaper reporter didn't record her initial reactions, but they did get some of her reactions later on. Like, for example, when she saw the world around, it was vibrant and much brighter than she had imagined. When she was able to see, she immediately recognized her husband. She immediately recognized each of her family members. But they were all taller and shorter and thinner and bigger. And nobody was exactly as she imagined. But she knew them all. And for the rest of her life, which was fairly short after this, by the way, she would wake up before the sun, so she could see the colors of the world just change. This is just an amazing story, I think. A kaleidoscope of sunsets and sunrises, tree waving from the wind, birds in flight. These are things that we take for granted, I think. We see them all the time, and we don't think anything of it, right? The miracle of seeing for the first time can hardly be understood in our condition, right? The bulk of humanity, and if I may be so bold, probably will never know the feeling of the awe to look at some of this stuff. Yet, this is almost exactly what this beatitude is telling us. Because if you take all of the miracles that this woman went through, and everything that we may have experienced ever before, and lump them all together, they pale in comparison to the very words of, "will see God." That's unimaginable. It's unimaginable. I can only imagine. I guess that song says, right? I can only imagine. Right? It'll be the greatest good, the greatest joy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will be able to see God, right? 2020 spiritual vision. All right, let's jump into this. There's our word. Always going to be one word, except for this week, there's nothing to this. We're not going to dive deep. I'm not going to give you the Greek word. I'm not going to give you the Hebrew word. I'm just going to define this with Merriam-Webster's dictionary. That's going to be good enough because pure is pure end to end. There's no difference in the definitions. And it says unmixed with any other matter. Gold. If you've ever looked at any of the History Channel stuff, and it's one of my favorite things. I like looking at that. Though gold usually comes as a conglomerate. It has mixtures of things in there. So what they'll do is they'll melt it, and they'll take away the contaminants and things that aren't gold, and then they'll re-pour the gold, and then you have pure gold, and that's way more expensive. Free from dust, dirt, or taint. Now that is the foundation from which we're going to understand everything else today. Right? Free from dust, from dirt, and from taint. 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 It's a trace of bad. I love this. Undesirable quality. This is exactly the way we're understanding pure. Free from all this stuff, from 100% without. That's our foundation for today. This is exactly what we need to remember as we go through. The Old Testament and the New Testament and all the verses will pretty much mirror each other when they look at the context. The context is, because it says heart, it's sort of an inward matter, which is why we named this, it's an inside job. Psalms 24, for example, 3 and 4, says, who's going to ascend the hill? Who's going to do that of the Lord? And who's going to stand in His holy place? Well, the only ones that are going to do that have clean hands and pure hearts, which makes it an inside job. Who do not lift up their souls to what is false, and who does not swear deceitfully. If I didn't know any better, I'd say Jesus took these two verses and just sort of streamlined it and presented it to us as a beatitude, because this looks exactly like it. And we're probably taking, without really, as soon as I was done writing this, I realized I should have made some references to this, because we're going to address most of this as we talk about today. Right? I find this very helpful. All right, so this is not an outward event. This is an inward event. To, I guess, help expand and clarify that, we're going to look at an example that Jesus had a little bit earlier. Very passionate, very particular about this. He's going to address these Pharisees. And he's pretty mad about this. Actually, the first part's written down. I didn't put it on slides. He says, he calls them hypocrites like 3 times. Woe to you hypocrites, he says. You're all about the outside stuff. This cup is clean and everything, but the inside's all dirty. And then he goes on and says, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You're like these whitewashed tombs. And they look beautiful and nice on the outside, but on the inside, they're dead. Bones. Everything's unclean. That's you guys. It's the same thing as you all. You're all right and righteous and everything. But the inside, you're just rotting. It's an inside job. It's an inside event. This is what we mean when we say an inside job. Right? Historically speaking, what's going on here is during the day, if an Israelite touched anything that had to do with a dead person, including the tombs, they were rendered unclean, which is a big deal, because you have to go through a lot of steps to be rendered clean once again. And you can't go into the temple, you can't really participate. And during this particular illustration that Jesus is using here is during the Passover. There's a lot of people, and you don't want to miss the events. So they would take the tombs, a lot of people during Passover, shoulder to shoulder, and they don't want to accidentally touch one, because then you'd be on. So they whitewashed these things, and they made them as clean as possible. This is today; it's a little bit cracked up and everything else. But that's what they would do. They would whitewash the whole thing. So if you touched it, you'll be okay. And that's history on why, when you go to today's cemeteries, you'll see these really brilliantly whitewashed tombs, because that's the history is a bunch of people that were afraid back in the day. And so this is a really vivid illustration of what we're talking about, right? You're all show, you're wearing some nice clothes, you pretend to pray out loud, you're playing the part, but on the inside you're nothing but a bunch of dead, rotting bones. When Jesus was really direct when he wanted to be from time to time. Really direct. This is not a beatitude to be taken lightly, right? It's not. It's a call for a very radical change and growth from the inside out. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see. This is supposed to be much more serious than I think people take it when they first read it. Because what it does is it really challenges the Christians that do check the box, and they go to church, and they do a couple of things, and they make sure everybody knows I'm a good Christian. But when you don't see them day to day throughout the work week, there's something else entirely. This has got everything to do with our personal relationship with God, and whether it is a real relationship or whether it's not. Right? So the question is this, the first one that we should sort of prick our minds with is, what is your purity of devotion right now? Right? Is it without distraction? Right? Is it free from dust, dirt, or taint? Is it? We need to keep this squarely in mind as we continue on from here, because I want to expand our understanding of this. Right? We use the word heart. In fact, the little thing I purposely used this because it's got a little heart there. But that's central to our understanding with our heart beats and things like that. But really, it's the mind, right? In many of the verses, you'll see the heart and the mind in the same verse, because if I think I want to pick this up, then I'm going to pick it up. But it starts with the way I think and feel. So when we say the heart, free from contaminants and distractions, we need to think about the mind as well, right? Okay. For example, as we expand on what we're talking about here today, I are instructed to go into a room. And in the room, you have 2 tables of food. You may eat one from one table. And you go in, the first one you see is lentils and beans. And I'm here to tell you that of the very most healthiest foods you could ever eat, top 5, lentils and beans. Not all beans. These are special beans that are a lot like lentils, and lentils are just beans also. Those are good for you. And then on the other table is a chocolate cake and a chocolate peanut butter pie. Now, you have lentils and beans. Chocolate. I love one of those things. Love. Hearts. One of those things. I do. Which one would you eat, I wonder? Where am I at? Hold on. There it is. Haha. All right, so I know what's best for me. I know what I should eat. But I don't have pure thoughts when it comes to food presently. You see where I'm getting with this? Now here's the line. I should have written this down on the board and have Michaela put it up here, because this is something I want us to remember when it's over with, if you're writing notes. Just because I know what is right does not translate to pure thoughts. Just because I know what's right, that doesn't mean I'm pure of thought. I know those beans are what I should eat. Man, if I'm allowed to have that peanut butter chocolate pie, I'll wash it down with the chocolate cake. Yeah, right? The 6th beatitude here, right? Being pure, it means a heart that does not bring mixed motives, divided loyalties to its relationship, to our relationship with the Lord. It means that when I go into that room, I make a beeline to the lentils without thought, without any arguments, because that's what's good for me. That's what I need to eat. That's what that means. That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. And that's a fact biblically as well. Purify your hearts, you unpure mind people. We're people. It's not going to work out. But look at the language. It says purify. We are a work in motion. We have to work at this. Purify is a work. That's what that is. We are at odds with ourselves and have been for a very long time. It has always been understood this way. In Psalm 86, says the same thing. Teach me your ways. That's a work in progress. Why? Why, O Lord? I want to walk in your truth. Undivided heart. So I can be pure. It's a work in motion. I want to get rid of the mixed emotions, my duplicity, double-mindedness, so I can have a simple, pure, laser-like focus on just God. There's a difference, and you can see it, with Christians that are working towards this end goal. The word sanctification may come up in this kind of a thing. And then there's others where really it's just a means to an end. They're just trying to get something else. And you know these people, they'll smile, they'll talk, but they're shuffling their feet, they're checking their watch, they got things to do. And we saw this last week when we did the unrepentant servant. He was in front of the master who owned him just untold amounts of money. He was forgiven. That was a means to an end because he had other things he needed to get done. He was not only double-minded, he fed into that. He fed into that double-minded thing. Blessed are the pure, the free from dust, the dirt, the taint, the bad. It's not easy. Especially for us. Right? Focusing on God with singleness of heart is one of the biggest challenges to Christians this day and age, especially in the 7-second concentration that what we have of a people. We have less concentration than a goldfish. Fact. As silly as that sounds. If we're being honest with ourselves, we fall into this category. But we have to be honest with ourselves. Right? Let's stir this up a bit and muddy the waters a little bit more so we can more with confidence put ourselves in this same group with everybody else. So, it's Lent. When I was in Texas with the kids, I would always teach on fasting. I believe fasting is extremely good, important discipline for the Christians. And I fast every year. So, I teach this to the kids. And I say, okay, you guys want to fast with me? And I say, yeah, well, we'll go ahead and fast from eating broccoli and, lima beans, things like that. He says, no, we're not going to do food. I want you to fast from your iPhones. I want you to fast from your Xbox. I want you to fast from the TV. I'm not asking you to fast for a year, maybe a little bit, things like that. It's a non-starter for these kids. They won't think about it. They won't talk about it. It's a flat no. That is contaminants. That is double-minded. And if what do you think? Right? A regular, self-identified, born-again Christian that goes to church every single week in the age group of 25-35, do you think they can fast from their cell phone? Not to be cynical, I'm saying I don't think so. Now, I'll even go so far as to let them go and get some sort of generic phone so they can receive phone calls. That's not what they want that phone for. They want it for so much more. I find it a victory or funny when I go out the door and I don't have my phone. I have to look for it. Where's my phone? I'm always looking for it. So my wife, ding, 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 where's my phone? It doesn't mean I'm really any different than anybody else. Every Lent, I give up lots of food, lots of drinks, and I'm down to bread and water. But Wendy says, if you really want to challenge it, because it's hard, and it's designed to be that way. Jesus gave up everything, had to rely on God, and that's the point. So I pray more, I rely on God more. And Wendy says, you really want to go ahead and challenge yourself, why don't you give up, sports? Like, what? Spring training starts, during Lent, and things like that. But she's right. I haven't. I should. And I'm going to try. But I'm going to do it with the food. I don't ever shift to do something else. I always make it more, because the challenge needs to be greater from time to time, not less. So I'm in the same boat. I have a long ways to go as well, just like anybody else when we really think about it. We have a long ways to go to achieve that whole pure of heart. We have lots of contaminants when we think about it. Right? When we think of pure of heart in these terms, it becomes clear, pun intended, that we're a long ways off. We do have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. I may be more devoted than I was before, but still nowhere near the end goal. So, what gives? What makes this so difficult, I wonder? What's the problem? I imagine that I'm speaking to the choir here, and maybe it's less of an issue for us right here. But really, as a Christian, as a whole, there's a problem, right? There's an issue. It could be we're thinking about this one-dimensionally instead of 3 or 4-dimensionally. Because I gave that one definition: dust and contaminants and taint. That's purposeful, because that's more than one equation to the problem. Heart means more than just the mind. Right? It's emotions, it's will, it's our ability to think, to feel, to decide. Every single one of those things, how to put that, distracts us from a clear thought process. Michaela, the TV's about to shut off over there. I apologize. It distracts us from a clear thought process. If our focus was intellectual only, right, then we're missing a lot. We're living with problems. That's why I mentioned that one thing. Just because I know it's right does not translate to pure of heart, pure of thought. Right? If we were to just live one-dimensionally and not with anything else, then we got some issues, right? We do. Jeremiah says the heart is deceitful above all things, beyond cure. Well, that makes sense. It's not in of myself that I can get anything done. As I recall in the first Beatitude, I'm going to mention about 6-7 times here today, it's the Lord that gives us a spirit. Right? For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. And then in Mark, I think it's Mark. Yeah, Mark. It says, nothing outside of man can make him unclean by going into him. But what comes out of that person makes him unclean, for it is from within. Out of men's hearts comes the evil thoughts. If we sit there and allow things to fester and don't face the contaminants that come from many different parts of the equation, right? So, as an example, if I were going to a house, I'm a property manager, and I'm inspecting it, and I see what looks like a fist-sized hole in the wall. Right? Everybody sees these little fist holes in the wall. Right? Am I to understand that the results of this fist-sized hole came from a good, clear thought process? No. No, of course not. It comes from a person that is clearly not free from dust, dirt, or taint. The stupidest mistakes I have ever made in my entire life came from poor emotional inputs. Every single time. And we talked about that one or two Beatitudes ago, about being able to control our emotions. It all always works together. Scripture is absolutely conclusive in all this. All we have to do is look into our own hearts with clarity and see the darkness and see the double-mindedness, right? The looming question now that rises to the surface is this. How do we get beyond this? It looks impossible. He's asking for perfection. Sure he is. We'll get into this a little bit more closely later on because it's part of the Sermon on the Mount. But Jesus says exactly that. I'm perfect. You should be too. Well, that's disappointing. That's disheartening. How in the world is this going to work out? Right? I'm not perfect. I never will be. Been taught that since the word go. You're not perfect. You've been taught that. But it's a process. And when we get flustered, when everything is hitting us at the same time, we lose our focus. It's a process. It's a work in fact, it says right there it's a process. Because we will, when the process is complete, be in such a state as we're prepared enough to see God at that point. Then you'll see God. Do we have a singleness of devotion to God yet? The answer is no. The answer is no. However, it is what God demands. It's impossible. But that's why we kneel in front of the throne of grace and He put a Spirit in front of us. Right? All of the Beatitudes say the same thing. Will be. After the process, works its way through. That doesn't mean we don't have something positive from the process now. Doesn't mean that at all. I mean, we can still feel God's presence. We really can. Right? If we, and this is why we talk about the difference between those that are actually trying and those that aren't. What's the one way, the most obvious way that we can feel God or know God is around? Right? The Word of God. It's got the word God right in there. The Word of God. This is not God. It's His Word, though. When I was a young fellow with lots of energy and hope, I went to church. Grew up in a church. Read much of the Bible. Not all of it. Not like what we do now. But I read enough. I learned stories. But it was all superficial. It was just stuff I learned. Had to go. I read it. Didn't mean a lot. Until the blood of Christ transformed me. And then all of a sudden, this came alive. I couldn't believe it was the same thing. I was at this most nights. Unless I'm doing something else I didn't want to do. Most nights. I couldn't believe this. But there's more to that. There's more. Right? You can see, you can hear God. You can hear God. Right. If I use the quintessential verse, which is, you can see God in every, I'm not going to do that. We're going to do something else instead. David talks about God. Talks about seeing God. He does. He's in Psalm 29, right? He says, the voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders, the Lord thunders over the mighty waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is majestic. He is either witnessing currently a thunderstorm or he had just got done doing it. And he's writing about this. And he's in awe. He's in awe. And he says in verse 7 that the voice of the Lord strikes with flashes of lightning. He sees God. Other people will see a thunderstorm and they're not seeing God. David sees God. He absolutely does. This is what seeing God's all about. Actually, all you have to do is go out that door and take a look around. and we'll know where you're at. Because God is quite frankly everywhere if we just take a little peeky poo. I love this picture right here. Right? That's a volcano. I can see God, and it's as small as a little itty-bitty ladybug. The truth of the matter is, people see what they want to see. I mean, are we even looking for God? This comes straight from the marrow of what this beatitude is talking about. Right? How much have we worked on this purity of our hearts and single-minded devotion to the Lord? Because we're not seeing God from day to day. We're a little bit far away, I think. This is a work in progress. The purer our hearts become, the more we're able to see God in this life. The more our hearts are focused on God, absorbed with Him, concentrate on this, and then we're freer from the distractions that continue to hamper our concentration. Even during adverse conditions, you can still see God. You can see whether He's doing something or He's not doing something, but everything is God's will, and you can see it so much clearer when you're in tune with God. Seeing God in this life, that's pretty awesome. And it should be what we're aiming for. When we do that, we continue to work at it, become more and more the reflection of Him. Right? Right? And we, who with unveiled faces all reflect the Lord's glory, are being transformed into His likeness with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. 2 Corinthians, by the way, 2 Corinthians 3:18. When it's long, I don't put the Corinthians thing up because I want to put the words there. 2 Corinthians. Seeing God daily, supremely awesome. I learned how to see Him in nature quite a lot. That's why I love hiking. I see Him all the time. I'm watching a hiker now. His name is Jay Wanders. You should see the things that he shows out there. The icicles and things that other hikers just are not presenting. And he sees it all. But he sees a tree that's sort of got just the roots and holding up the tree. He says, look at that. He spends 15 minutes looking at this tree. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they, right? They, those folks, us. It's more than just a part-time Christian effort. Right? This takes a supreme amount of everything we have to one focus. Not more than one focus, one focus. And we need to have faith just like Job. I mean, Job has gone through a lot. And then he still has the faith and the confidence of who God is to say things like this, that I know, not I think. Here's what I believe. When we're in society, we say that too often. Here's what I believe. Wrong. Wrong way. Here's what I know. That the Redeemer lives. That in the end, at the end, into conclusion, the thing that we're hoping for, we look to the mountain and get our hope for in the end, He was going to stand on this earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh, I will see God. I will see God. Him, with my eyes. Not somebody else. Not all these other people, not these pretenders. God. And I love how this ends. My heart yearns within me. This is the condition of the Christian with the single laser-like devotion unto God. Right? This is it. Blessed, approved by God, knowing you're in the right place, blessed are the pure in heart, those with clean, unmixed, untainted heart for God, their thoughts, their emotions, without taint. For it's those people that continuously now and later will see God in life and eternity. That was a long one, but That's everything we just said. And that lines up with that song we said earlier. Is this your experience? I mean, I would imagine when we started out, we'd say, yes, this is our experience, until we went through some of them illustrations. And that's not to tear us down, but to simply make us realize we have a whole lot more work to do. Until the very end. Have we ever experienced it? I'm going to say yes for this group of people, but we have to continue doing it. Right? Miss Pennica. Her miracle was amazing. Hard to try to say something even more amazing now than what we have presented for us here today. However, it comes with a little bit of irony. It comes with some irony. You know what that is? The doctor that did the operation on her told her this procedure was available 40 years ago. So she went 40 years before she didn't know. No one told her. She was ignorant. Right? And then she almost died before. She almost was sightless her whole life, but she managed to get it at the last point. That's not an excuse for you and me. That has never been an excuse for us Christians. It hasn't been. Right? It's not. He died for all of us so that we might no longer live for ourselves. That's the double-minded. That's the work that we do within ourselves. And the longer we work at this, the more we put ourselves in front of the Lord, the more that we just block out the distractions and concentrate on Him. Because for Him is who we live for, who died and rose again on their behalf. And that's the bell ringer. We should be absolutely ecstatic that somebody went out of their way to give us the opportunity to live with Him in heaven. We should have so much motivation to show our appreciation for what has happened. Blessed are the pure in heart, for it is those that will see God. We're not going to be ready anytime sooner. But we do need to be seriously working at this day to day to day. Let's go to Lord in prayer.